Coming up on today's episode of Airborne Unlimited, nominees are named for the 2015 Collier Trophy Award. A Homeowners Association regulates drones. Flight Design USA has a second production source. I'm Bree Cross. It's February 5th, 2016, and this is Airborne Unlimited. The National Aeronautic Association announced Tuesday that 9 aerospace projects and accomplishments will compete for the 2015 Robert J. Collier Trophy. For 104 years, the Robert J. Collier Trophy is awarded annually, quote, for the greatest achievement in aeronautics or astronautics in America with respect to improving the performance, efficiency, and safety of air or space vehicles, the value of which has been thoroughly demonstrated by actual use during the preceding year. Led by NAA Chairman Jim Campbell, the selection committee will consist of leaders representing various organizations throughout aerospace. Campbell said, quote, the Collier is the Super Bowl of the world's aerospace industry, and this list of nominees certainly reflects it. These are all extremely worthy nominations, and they each demonstrate the vitality of our industry. While ANN finds the majority of these nominations to be worthwhile, we find the inclusion of the Icon A5 to be well questionable for such a delayed, troubled, still incomplete program. The selection committee will meet on Tuesday, March 8th in Arlington, Virginia, and the winner will be announced that evening at NAA Spring Awards Dinner held at the Crystal Gateway Marriott. Once again, it's time to play the amusing and informative community game of Who Owns This Airspace? A townhome development homeowners association in New Jersey has passed a resolution banning the flight of model airplanes and drones in the neighborhood, and they have set fines beginning at $100 for the first offense. The resolution passed by the association says in part that, quote, the use of unmanned aerial vehicles such as model airplanes, drones, and similar devices is prohibited from being used in and above the property and airspace of the association. This prohibition applies to owners, residents, and visitors. The letter was posted to the UAV Legal News and Discussion Facebook page. The board asserts that there have been complaints about UAVs in the community and that they, quote, represent a safety hazard, an invasion of privacy, as well as a disruption of peace and quiet to which residents have a reasonable expectancy. The FAA has apparently not yet weighed in on this claim of jurisdiction, but when they do, the game gets exciting. After the break, Flight Design will receive aircraft from Taiwan.
Redbird is quickly becoming the industry standard for flight training. Since Redbird introduced its revolutionary FMX in 2007, colleges, universities, and flight training operations around the world have integrated Redbird products into their curriculum. It's time to discover what Redbird can do for you. Join the migration.
There's a difference between charting a steady course and pushing for the ceiling. And for nearly a century, Hartzell Propeller has been defining that difference. It's in our passion for engineering and research and our dedication to testing the limits of performance. We are built on honor. We are Hartzell Propeller.
Welcome back. If you would like to be a supporter of Airborne Unlimited, send an email to jim@aero-news.net. Flight Design USA signed a production and distribution agreement with Aero-Jones Aviation of Taichung, Taiwan, to supply flight design aircraft and spare parts for the U.S. market. Tom Patton, president of Flight Design USA, said, quote, we are pleased to work in close coordination with Aero-Jones to bring more flight design airplanes into the USA. We have not been able to get enough airplanes to meet demand for nearly 2 years. However, that situation is now remedied, and we will be getting our first planes delivered in March of this year. Aero-Jones Aviation has been producing the CTLS series for primarily the Southeast Asian market and has been working with Flight Design for more than 2 years. Aero-Jones has been licensed by Flight Design to do all fabrication and assembly work needed to serially build CTLS and CTLSI aircraft to ASTM industry standards. Pagani added, quote, we are awaiting 3 CTLS series aircraft per month for the remainder of this year and expect quick service on parts for the existing fleet as well. It's Friday, and that means that it's time for ANN CEO and Editor-in-Chief Jim Campbell to check in with his weekly Barnstorming commentary. With so many challenges and unresolved opportunities in aviation, Jim says it's not just a good idea to build a better aero community, it's absolutely essential. Here is this week's Barnstorming.
Thanks, Bree, and hi, folks. Let's talk about something that ANN has addressed in its own way over a number of years, but I'm seeing increased criticality on the topic as we go forward. Recently, groups within the aviation spectrum, whether it be model aircraft or air tours years before, the air show community in some cases, Part 135 in other cases, have all come under individual scrutiny, attack, whatever you want to call it. And while most of them have been able to emerge somewhat unscathed, with the exception of things like the helicopter community in New York, which now just lost 50% of its business because it was either that or go out of business. It seems like now more than ever, this Aeroverse, this Aero community, really needs to get its act together. And when I say get its act together, I'm talking about building a community, synergizing, communicating, working together, even if it's not your particular interest area, but supporting each other, because the plain fact of the matter is this: we're in trouble. If you take a look at the numbers, we continue to see declines. If you take a look at the political spectrum, we continue to be ignored or marginalized. If you take a look at the aviation world in general, we're disorganized. We don't know how to preach to the choir, even that anymore. We certainly don't know how to get our messaging outside of our normal spectrum. And finally, we're scattered. What have you heard from AOPA lately? Its message has been lost in the dust. What have you heard from a number of the associations lately? What's going on? While a couple of them rise here and there, and I've got hopes for EAA and I've got hopes for MBAA, too many of them, well, they're just not heard from anymore, or at least they're interested in projects that either raise money or help them feather their own nest, but they don't embolden, empower, and energize the community. Folks, we got to do something. It's getting bad out there. But the most important thing we can do is organize. The reason the NRA can take so much crap is because they can give it back. The reasons why the folks in the eco community can take so much crap is because they can give it back. They're organized, they're dedicated, no matter what you might think of them. The way so many individual interest areas survive is by banding together, communicating, organizing, and making sure that their voices are not only heard, but to a certain extent respected, if not feared. Aviation has none of those things going for it right now. We're in trouble. Seriously, look at what we're doing, support where you can, join where you can, work with where you can, and even if it's not your own particular bailiwick, when you see a part of the aviation industry under attack, speak up, join in, fight it off, and be a part of a solution rather than somebody standing on the sidelines wondering where the aviation world went. Wouldn't that be a shame? For the Aero-News Network, Airborne and Aero-TV, I'm Jim Campbell. And no kidding, folks. Let's get organized.
After these messages, a new seaplane base for Miami.
Concorde's recombinant gas RG series sealed battery technology produces a high-performance battery with the advantages of being pre-tested and fully charged at the factory. Find out more about Concorde's entire line of batteries at www.concordebattery.com. Concorde, the heart of your aircraft.
Sandia introduces the new SAI 340 Quattro TSO'd airspeed, attitude, altitude, and slip. With integral backup battery, safety never looked so good. See it now at www.sandia.aero.
Welcome back. With so much news coming out of the aviation industry, we're summarizing some other interesting stories in a brief segment we call Around the Patch. The Miami, Florida City Commission voted to remove a roadblock to the construction of a new seaplane base proposed by Chock's Airline at Government Cut. The commission approved rezoning a section of Watson Island, giving Chock's approval for its new headquarters. Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University is trying to raise $150,000 to restore its historic 1928 WACO aircraft, previously owned by founder T. Higbee Embry. They say as a continuously operated museum in flight, the Embry-Riddle WACO will inspire thousands of budding aviators. Jeppesen has announced that Kevin Crowley is succeeding Mark Van Tine as Jeppesen's Chief Executive Officer and Vice President Digital Aviation for Boeing. Under Crowley, Jeppesen will continue to complete its transformation to being the leading provider of integrated information solutions. The most recent aviation crowdfunding project that we've come across is an ADS-B receiver that its creators say will cost about the equivalent of a tank of avgas. The receiver is Flightbox, and the company says it's ADS-B for everyone. A North Carolina man faces prison and fines for failing to pay taxes and operating an airplane without a license. The tax investigation of his aviation dealings led to the discovery he had piloted an airplane after surrendering his pilot certificate in 2012. Well, that's the trip around the patch. Now let's move on to the rest of the news. After years of budget uncertainty, Defense Secretary Ash Carter announced earlier this week that the A-10 Thunderbolt II, affectionately nicknamed the Warthog, has officially been taken off the budget chopping block. The Air Force Times reports that Carter said the DoD is, quote, also investing to maintain more of our fourth-generation fighter and attack jets than we previously planned, including the A-10, which has been devastating ISIL from the air. The Air Force has tried for several years to retire the A-10, but supporters in Congress have consistently blocked those attempts, and this reprieve will keep it in action until the year 2022. The Arizona Daily Star reports that there are about 300 A-10s still in active service with the Air Force. Among its staunchest supporters are Senator John McCain and Representative Martha McSally, a former A-10 combat pilot. Both have argued that there is no other airplane in the Air Force inventory that fulfills the close air support role of the A-10, and retiring the plane would put U.S. ground troops at risk. Well, that's our program for today. Remember to get comprehensive real-time 24/7 coverage of the latest aviation and aerospace stories anytime at aero-news.net. Remember that Airborne Unlimited is streamed daily Monday through Friday with additional breaking news bulletins for important stories that fall outside of our normal deadlines. Please join us and a growing roster of over 100 outstanding industry associations and organizations every weekday for the best in aviation and aerospace news from the staff of the Aero-News Network, the aviation world's most comprehensive news and information resource. Have a wonderful weekend. We will see you Monday.